Terry Cutler is an international award-winning cybersecurity expert and ethical hacker known for his catchy online videos, numerous television appearances, live public speaking events, extensive coaching products, and top-level consulting services. Over the past 20 years, he's advised some of Canada's largest companies on how to prevent and remedy internal and external security penetration. For the general public, he developed an effective online learning program called Internet Safety University. With over 24,000 students from over 150 countries, he's helped educate his pupils on cybercrime, spying, security failures, internet scams, and the real social networking dangers that families and individuals face every day. Terry was named IFSEC Global's top 20 most influential people in cybersecurity for 2018 and again in 2019, and was also awarded 2017 Cybersecurity Educator of the Year award. Please welcome your host, Terry Cutler.
Welcome, everyone. Can you guys hear me? You guys can start chatting. You guys will be able to talk live and chat in the comments. I really want to welcome and thank everyone today for your time. I know how much is very valuable, and I want to make sure I can deliver as much value as I can. So today I brought in some very special guests, and we're going to be talking about how we got the book launched. I'll also talk about some of the stuff that's in the book, like such as the prevention for ransomware. Ironically, I just got a call before going live from a company that just got hit with a ransomware. So we'll talk about the what the process will be. So the first person I want to bring on today is Dave Cutler. Dave, can you hear me? There, I'm mute. You can hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes. So Dave is a brother from a different mother. Right, so Dave's based out of Utah, and we've known each other for almost 20 years now. Happy anniversary! We used to work together at Novell, and one of the reasons why I brought Dave on is because he's actually the first person on the planet to buy the book, and he actually got it via a glitch in the Amazon system. So you actually have the book in your hands.
I do. Where did I put it?
It's in the trash.
No, there it is. Let me walk over and. You told me to have it handy, and I forgot.
Wow, you're the first one to get it. So have you ever had a chance to even open it?
I've read it cover to cover, and I was super impressed at the end that you even mentioned COVID-19. I mean, this is hot off the press with the latest.
Hot off the press. Yeah, and what'd you think of it?
It was really good, easy to read, logical, and some really good tricks and tips.
Nice. And so right now you're working for a company called Venafi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is machine identity protection. That's what the protection of identities. Maybe you could talk quickly about what that is.
Yeah, you bet. There are two actors on a network, people and machines. We spend a lot of money with identity and access management software to protect human identities, but just starting to realize that machines don't use usernames and passwords. They use things like TLS certificates and SSH keys to identify themselves as being secure to us and to each other. And so Venafi has invented the technology to protect those machine identities, make sure that they're current, valid, secure, and in the right hands. Maybe that's the next book.
There's so much content for so many books, and you'll learn a bit later when I talk to Richard and Dunya how I really did not want to write a book. I was like, why am I going to write a book when this thing's going to be obsolete when it hits the shelf? But luckily, I got a team that can get stuff done very quickly and very, very professionally. And I was very fortunate to get the COVID stuff into the book and actually get it out the door in a good period of time,
Yeah, I highly recommend it. In fact, I posted the first review on Amazon for you last night as well.
Did you really? Thanks, man. So what was your takeaway from the book?
At Venafi, I run services and IT. I'm the CIO and CISO, and I found this book to be very useful for anybody who owns a computer to help tighten up their own security. but also for small to medium businesses. Very good recommendations on the basics of security and not getting hacked.
The reason why I added that part 2 to the book, and I'll reveal the table of contents after our interview. The reason why I added that section is because I had a customer that saw me at an event 2 years prior, and they've been having so many cyber issues over the years, and he calls me up, bring me into a meeting, hires me for the services, and I asked him the question, "What took you so long?" And his answer actually shocked me and startled me. Was like, well, we didn't know how to get started. So that's why I had to make sure that was added to the book.
Yep. Really useful. Valuable.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you.
You're one of my favorite people. We got to work together for nearly 10 years early in your career. But
yeah.
Also, I do have a hobby of buying books from people I know. So I do expect this signed autographed copy.
Absolutely.
Me as well.
Absolutely. Once this is ready to go, it's in the mail.
All
I
right.
really appreciate your time today, buddy. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
Take care. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly reveal some of the table of contents of the book. So right now it is available on Amazon. It's also available on Kindle, and the audiobook version is in the works at the moment. And I'll play for you a sample clip towards the end. It's going to be available on Amazon Paperback, Kindle, Audible, and iTunes. So in the table of contents, we have things like taking your first steps. A lot of times companies are being hacked because the hackers are profiling their employees on the internet. And a lot of times customers don't realize how much information is actually out there about them. So I actually show them how to do some advanced Google searching on themselves to find information that they didn't even know existed. Okay. I also talk about ransomware, which is the highest form of online extortion available. Basically, the moment you get hit with this, your company will be down for at least 100 hours. Now imagine this, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're getting a call from the IT department saying, you know what, all of our data is locked. No employees will be able to work in the morning. No transactions, no commerce can be done. And all your data is locked up and completely unusable. And on top of it, they're asking for a ransom. What are you going to do? So this is going to be key. So I talk about what to do before, during, and after a ransomware attack. I'll also go through some war stories. So the way people are doing what's called social engineering on people, the psychological manipulation of people. This is where I would find information about you, gain your trust, become your friend, and then use your information against you in a cyber attack. So I go through some of those things. I also talk about how to lock down your social media accounts. And you're going to hear from Allison shortly, who had all of these advanced protections put in place, and she was still able to get hacked because they were able to trick the phone carrier. She was part of what's called a porting scam. So she'll be able to tell you that story. I also reveal some of the latest scams in this as well, including the COVID. Obviously, mobile security. So there's a section in here for parents as well, because parents, in my opinion, are lagging behind their kids' knowledge of technology and online world. So there's a section in here for you on how to get up to speed with what they're doing, and some advice, including some acronyms and abbreviations, which was a very, very funny chapter. But it's how to spot certain patterns of emojis when they come in a certain order, mean certain things. And then I made sure to put a section in there how to tighten your computer security. A lot of people came to me and saying, you know, I have a Mac, so I'm safe, which is not really the case. Okay, so obviously Windows is less secure out of the box. So I made sure I had a section here that would teach you how to secure it like a Mac, kind of. And then chapters 10 to 12 was how to get started with your business in cybersecurity. And the whole book is in layman's terms. So I think it has a lot of value, as Dave mentioned earlier. So I'd like to take a second now and invite Allison to the show. Allison, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hey. So we were talking last week when I got a frantic chat from you
Yeah.
while I was catching up on email. And you were saying, I've been hacked. What am I doing? And I'm thinking, oh, it's because you didn't put 2FA on easily. And which was not the case that we find out. So maybe you can talk about what it's like to experience as an individual getting hacked.
Yeah. So, I can say I've had some pretty significant health issues in my life, and all kinds of, emergency things happen. And this was like up in my top 3 most stressful events of my life, much more stressful than I would ever have predicted. And what happened with me, so a couple of weeks prior, my email did get hacked. And to be fair, I did not have 2-factor authentication on that account because it was not an account I use very often. So I had 2-factor authentication on most of my things, but there were a few accounts that I just didn't use very often and just forgot to put it on. So that was the background. And then it was the evening, I was working, and I got a text from my service provider saying, somebody has requested that your service be removed from TELUS and moved, and if this isn't you, please call. And I happen to know what porting out schemes are, so I knew what was happening. And I immediately
Maybe you could talk about what is a porting out scheme.
Yeah, so a porting out scheme is where somebody pretends to be you one way or another. In my case, they actually hacked into my TELUS account, but they can do it in other ways. They can call the service provider, and if they have enough background information on you, like your date of birth and your mother's maiden name or whatever they ask for, they claim to be you, and they say, okay, I want to switch my account from TELUS to whatever other service provider. And in doing so, they take control of your phone number. So now they're getting all your calls, they're getting all your texts. So I got this text, I knew what was happening. I called TELUS immediately with the phone number they gave me, and I was on hold for half an hour. In that time, my phone got switched. It got switched to Bell. Well, I found out later it got switched to Bell.
And you're on hold because of the COVID situation, because they're short-staffed.
Yeah, but I don't think they have 24-hour, they don't deal with this 24-hour anyway. This is something we can go into later, but your phone is being used as the key to financial information with 2-factor authentication, and there is no 24-hour protection on your phone. So in fact, the reason this works so well is that all the different phone companies have different business hours. So what this hacker did is they moved my phone to Bell in the last 5 minutes before Bell closed. So when I got on the phone with TELUS, they couldn't switch my phone back because they have to call Bell, get permission, but Bell's closed for the day. So he had access to my phone until Bell opened the next day, which is 12 hours. Now, every account on which I had 2-factor authentication, meaning I got a code to my cell phone, was now open. It was because they can bypass passwords that way. So they had free reign on PayPal was the key account, obviously, they went into.
So what's going through your mind at that exact moment?
I was freaking out. I mean, freaking out in the really literal, I'm screaming at people, I'm screaming at my husband, I'm screaming at my daughter. I knew from having read about this that people had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars and did not get their money back. It wasn't protected by whatever, fraud, anti-fraud, insurance or whatever is on these accounts. So I just started calling. I calling my credit card, calling PayPal, calling the bank, and everybody has hour-long waits, right? So I've spoken to my husband, and I think we had 3 different phones calling these different, and just on hold, and it had to be me, right? They won't talk to anybody but me. So I've got different people kind of telling me when the hold is over. And I was freaking out so much, I felt like my head was going to explode. You start to lose the ability to think straight, right? I'm trying to remember which accounts are linked to PayPal, which bank accounts, which credit cards. And I have 2 different PayPal accounts, and I couldn't even remember. So yep. I was just, you can't, even though I knew what was happening, I knew what had to be done, I could not think straight. My brain just went into overload. I'm screaming at my husband. Later I had to apologize to him, I'm sorry, I screamed at you. I know this wasn't your fault. I know you were trying to help me, but, thank God he was the one who thought about because when we called the bank, amazingly, the bank's like, well, go into your branch tomorrow, we can close your account. They're in my account now and they're draining it. So he at least thought to empty the account. I didn't even think of that. It's
How much
obvious.
was transferred out?
So the fraudster did two things. He tried to buy an iPhone on eBay for $2,000. That transaction went through. He also tried to buy a Switch on some, I don't know, it wasn't eBay, it was another online service, which got blocked. And to this day, I don't actually know how these got blocked, because we called PayPal and they were closed for the day. We just got voicemail. So it was really complicated calling PayPal. Like, we called right before they closed. Like, they closed like 7 or 8 at night, and this happened at 7. And the wait time was an hour and a half. So we knew that we wouldn't be able to speak to anybody. But there's a complicated automated system that you can kind of go through. And we had to kind of go through it over and over again to hear all the options. And I did at some point, I was able to flag that these were not authentic transactions, but I wasn't sure if this was going to anybody or if it was just going to get looked at the next day. I'm not sure if that's why these 2 transactions got flagged or not, because I didn't talk to anybody at PayPal. But they did get flagged. The $640 one got reversed before it came out of my account. The $2,000 one did not get reversed. It went through, it was deducted from my account, but then on my PayPal, it said that it was being recredited, but it took about 4 or 5 days to go through my bank account. And I wasn't sure. I mean, during those 4 or 5 days, I was checking like every 3 hours. I didn't really believe, I kept waiting to get the other shoe to drop, and, they weren't going to be able to get my money back. And, I just spent, the first night I didn't sleep at all. For those 12 hours where they had access to my account, I wasn't sleeping. I ended up tweeting about it to TELUS and to PayPal at 3 a.m. and actually got their attention that way. So if anyone's in this situation, tweeting seems to be the one way you can get their attention outside of business hours. But it really disrupted my work. I'm a medical writer and I'm really busy right now, and I couldn't work. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think. I couldn't, and I had to make, a huge list of phone calls. It was incredibly, I must have taken 5 years off my life.
So let me ask you, so before the hack happened, did you ever think in your mind this would happen to me?
Yes and no, because I actually knew what porting out schemes were, and I read a really scary story. It's a farming family, I believe in Saskatchewan, who were victims of this scheme, and they got into their business account and drained it of $300,000. Now, this happened in December, I believe, 2019. And when I read that, first of all, I don't find the media is explaining this well. When I read that, even reading the article, I didn't understand what a porting out scheme was. So I looked it up. So I actually knew, I don't think many people know what this is. So I knew what it was. And I thought, gee, that's scary. But I didn't really have any information on how to prevent it. And it didn't seem like it was super popular. So yes, it was in the back of my mind that it could happen. But no, I wasn't kind of living my life thinking, oh my God, this could happen to me. So, yeah, it was definitely a shock. But like I said, I knew immediately when I got that text what was happening.
So you're now that you're very knowledgeable about all this stuff. Actually, a little side note: when we spoke yesterday, you can reveal a little tidbit about what happened when he purchased on eBay.
Oh yeah, so my pet theory is that this was a kid who Googled and sort of got some tips about how to do this. I don't think it was a professional. I could be wrong, because what happens on eBay when you order something, the name and address to which the item is being delivered shows up on your PayPal account. So I have his name and address. Now, it's possible that this was spoofed and they're saying, well, maybe it's not really him. I don't know. I have no idea. But he's also local to me, which I think that's a weird coincidence. So I don't know what that means. Anyway, I've sent it, I've done an online submission to the anti-fraud people, and I've given the name and address, and I don't know what they're going to do with it.
Sounds like
most people are like, well, call 911, which is ridiculous. Obviously I'm not going to call 911.
We got to send Guido.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. So yeah,
Awesome.
So I don't think he was very sophisticated, unless there's some kind of complicated scam going on where the stuff gets shipped to him and they steal it from him, and I don't know. I have no idea, but that was pretty funny.
There was an article that came out that in the hacker news that there was over 445 million attacks since January against remote workers. It's off the wall. I'm getting calls. Like I said, I got a ransomware call just before this live chat, and my phone is constantly going off the hook with, what do I do?
Yeah,
So,
and there's really, like, with COVID-19 and all these call centers being, like, really reduced, they're really taking advantage of it. They're really taking advantage of it.
Well, they know, right? Because the moment you leave the corporate firewall, the safety of the corporate firewall, and work from home, and a lot of companies are actually using their personal computers for their employees, and which don't have adequate security on it, and their kids are using it, maybe getting that infected, and it's infecting the company. I mean, in my managed service, I'm monitoring a couple of companies, and I'm receiving so many daily false alarms because people are connecting to unrestricted Wi-Fi, or which is their personal Wi-Fi's, which is not the corporate network's firewall. Wi-Fi. So I'm getting all these alerts that these people are connecting to Starbucks, and like, oh my God, I'm scared. So
yeah, well, my husband and I work from home anyway, so we have a lockdown. We have the firewall, we have all that stuff, and I still got, they still got through. I mean, I think as a, I'm not a techie. I'm not super technically knowledgeable. I know probably more than the average 50-year-old woman, but I rely on my husband and my brother a lot, who are more tech. And I think I don't know what I don't know, but I think I know more than average. And and I got hacked in the worst possible way. I think it can happen to everybody. I think for the regular person, it's virtually impossible to keep up with this. You really. You need to consult an expert. You need to, I don't know, but I think your book is great. It's a great first step, but 6 months from now, there'll be something else.
That's why I'm trying to, there was a couple of ideas that I had. One was was obviously the course, but then people would say, I don't have time to watch this stuff. I want to go watch Bachelorette. Or I can write a distilled version of the book, and people will get it. And probably 90% of them won't even get past the first chapter.
Yeah.
This will never happen to me. I want to go back and watch Lost. And then I had an idea for an app that was coming up, but that fell through because of some scams that happened with it from other investors on the other side. And now I'm thinking about maybe doing the live show where people will be able to call in or email in and get their questions answered live. So they'll have me for an hour, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is very, it's even difficult for us cybersecurity folks to keep up to date as well. There's just so much attacks and scams coming out.
Yeah. But I really feel, personally, as a consumer now who's been hacked, I really feel like the telecommunications companies and the financial companies have to step up more. They put a lot of effort into saying, we have your security in mind, and they don't. The fact that like I said, our phones are becoming a key to our financial information with two-factor authentication, and the fact that there isn't 24/7 fraud protection, like that I could call TELUS and tell them this is happening, and they couldn't do anything for 12 hours. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And PayPal too. PayPal, you cannot. There is no 24/7. They have business hours. So if you're hacked after business hours, they have 8 hours to take your money. Like, that's a long time.
I really, really appreciate your time coming on to share your experience with us.
Oh, my pleasure. So I just want to leave you with one piece of advice to your listeners, which is call your service provider, your telephone service provider, and ask them to put on. They use different names. It can be called port security or port blocking. It's possible the person you talk to won't even have heard of it, because it's a new thing, but they all offer it. And what that means is they have to go through extra security measures before they transfer your account. It depends on the service provider. Some people, you have to go into the actual office and sign a paper. Some just, call you and do extra, but it's just an extra layer to make sure this doesn't happen. They can't put it on automatically because by CRTC rules, they have to make it easy to change service providers, but you can ask for it, and you really should. You really, really should. So that's my takeaway lesson from this experience.
That's very, very valuable.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Okay,
well,
my pleasure.
For coming on. Have a good one. Talk to you later.
You too. All right. Bye-bye.
That was amazing information. So now I want to bring on another, I call him a cyber hero, that's also in my industry. Pete, how are you?
I don't know how to respond to cyber hero.
actually, I'm not sure if you saw actually you probably didn't see it yet, but in the book, I shall read word for word how I wrote a little thank you to you. Thank you to Pete Herzog for being part of this book and my legacy. I wanted you to be part of this because I consider you a pioneer in the cybersecurity industry with all your work that you've done with the what's called the OSTEM, the Open Source System Testing System,
Security.
Open Source Testing Methodology Manual, and the Hacker High School. So because our values are aligned and educating of the kids, I want to thank you and keep up the great work.
Thanks.
So,
I'm honored. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you asked me. I loved writing the foreword. It was, thank you very much. I mean,
here's the foreword of the book.
History is going to remember me as the guy who started too soon. You know, I'm the one who missed the boat because I started too early. Hacker High School, we started in 2003 when people were hating the word hacker. So, I mean, it took I think 2014 before schools would even think about allowing it. As a matter of fact, I recall schools in the early 2000s telling us, kids don't need this. Teenagers don't need this. And you know what? Maybe they were right. Then again, phones came along and everything, but we had the curriculum, we had everything ready, and it's still up there. It's still out for free. It's still being updated. We're still getting support. We had IBM support us to do a lesson on SOC analysts. We had Microsoft support us to do one on securing Windows 10. So yeah, we're always looking for more support, obviously, to make lessons, but yeah, we kind of struck too soon, though. I think that's our problem. You know, we started really early. Austin was way ahead of its time. We got a lot of crap for that.
Well, that's how we connected, right? Because I started in cybersecurity. Well, obviously I worked for Novell, right? And I was doing the whole network stuff, operating system stuff. But then I started getting into identity and security management, and at the time, border manager, right? The firewall stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this hacking stuff is very, very cool. And so I started getting inspired by watching shows like CSI and 24. I'm like, how does Chloe O'Brien breaking all these systems so fast? And that's when I started taking the ethical hacker training. And that's when I discovered the awesome that you were creating, the testing methodology manual. Yeah. And that's what I reached out to. And that's how you got my email from Novell. Maybe you can share that quick story because you talk about it in the book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, you have to understand at the time, what was it, like 2008, 2009? It was, I can't remember the exact year now off the top of my head, but I mean, I get a lot of mails and I don't always get the answer to them just because it's overwhelming. And, you know, I can't respond to everybody. And so I get a lot of mails in my inbox especially for the Austin, and I happened to see one from the domain Novell, and I'm like, because Novell was actually my first forage into hacking. As a matter of fact, here's a little trivia. If you go back into issues of 2600 magazine, I actually wrote my very first piece on hacking Novell, and way back when. I don't even know if I use my real name anymore, to be honest with you. But it's still there. I still have the copy where I did it. Anyway, so I saw Novell and I thought, and I actually took the time to read it because a lot of times I did. I mean, we were. There was only two of us working on ISACOM at the time, and ISACOM, and it was a lot of work to get the Austin out. I know we were trying to get one out by 2010, the version 3. And there was just a lot going on. I mean, we were making some huge changes. And, you know, I have to be honest with you, most of the mail we get is people telling us how wrong we are. And, you know, at some point you're like, well, okay, I get it for what you think. It probably feels
Maybe you could
wrong
talk about quickly about what the Austin is for those, because I have a mixed audience. I get a lot of guys who just want to get into cybersecurity. Maybe you could quickly talk about what that is, the Austin.
Okay, so it's basically a methodology for how to do testing and analysis and security. It's pretty straightforward, but it's also very thick. We tried to be very thorough, which
it's only 1,100 pages or something.
It's like 250, 260, I think.
Oh, there's another one. I saw it was 1,100. Maybe that wasn't that one.
No, there's books that people have written books to break it down even more and describe it better. So I'm sure that could have been it. So it's open source. Anybody can kind of run with it and do things like that with it. And but yeah, it's just the methodology. And it really describes very practical terms on how to analyze security and then how to test it step by step. I mean, we don't actually tell you how, we just tell you what you need to do, because the thing is the tools, the tactics, everything changes. So in the end with the Austin, you can actually test anything, literally anything. So, and that's why we wrote it for physical, wireless. I mean, the thing was way ahead of its time. As a matter of fact, way too far ahead of its time. And we had to deal with a lot of naysayers, a lot of people telling us that we're crazy. But it turns out, that we weren't that off. As a matter of fact,
well, at that time, it was like, why do you want to tell people how to hack?
Yeah,
and like we talk about, right? It's like learning martial arts. You can learn it for self-defense, or you can learn it to break someone's neck. So.
Well, we get that a lot with Hacker High School. I mean, why do you want to teach teenagers to hack? Well, the reason why is because they're going to realize how easily they can get caught. And it's the same thing with any hacking class you take or any security class. You realize once you hit a certain amount of knowledge, you realize how inadequate it actually is. And you see that. You see security professionals out there who are just like, oh, you just need a firewall and get antivirus and make sure you keep up on patching. And I'm like, you have never worked in the field, have you? I mean, if you think it's just anything, you're so far off.
Well, that's how most companies think today. And that's what part 2 of the book is about. Is that, well, I have a firewall, I have antivirus, I have encryption, my patches. I even have an IT guy. I'm covered. And, we show that once you get past that traditional security, that they don't have detection in place to even detect that a hacker has been there for 6 to 18 months prior. And then they're like, oh, my God, what do we do?
We worked with some mathematicians because we had some pretty complex, we had some complex equations in the Austin. Because one of the things we tried to do in the first 2 versions were very practical for professionals and stuff. The third version, we went completely academic, and mostly because we needed that credibility. And then Austin 4, as it comes out, is going to be practical again. But we really needed it, and it's good because there's been a lot more theses written about it, a lot more. I mean, if you go to Google Scholar, you'll find it included in a lot more things because of that direction. But it's so we worked with some mathematicians and we looked at some things like, for example, for a small network, we're talking about 20 people network, small company. It came out that the number of ways a threat could actually move into and through the company, the number of ways was 1 times 10 to the 126th. That's 126 zeros afterwards. Yeah, you could forget it. And just we were looking at the number of unique security products that could possibly exist based on all of our knowledge about security. If everybody made a unique security product, it was something like 1.3 times 10 to the 36th or something like that, I think, which and that's figuring out about 1/3 of them we can't make with today's technology anyways. There's just no way. Like there's certain things you can't make.
And
things
that's the hardest part, right?
Stuff.
It's finding the unknowns. Like I've worked with, like I'm a partner of let's say CrowdStrike, for example, and they have very, very great technology. But the problem is that for you to, as a small business, to even get started with that type of technology is like $10,000 just to get started, right? But it's a certified antivirus removal platform. Like you don't need any other antivirus except their technology. But it's very, very expensive, and a lot of people don't know how to do it. And you need maybe a dedicated guy that can look into these types of breaches. Now you got to hire a full-time cyber guy, which could be $60,000 to $100,000 a year, and it's so difficult. Like you mentioned, right, in your quote in the book, winners don't quit and quitters don't win. But if you neither win or quit, you likely work in cybersecurity.
Yeah, but see, the thing is that one of the things that we don't think about is the fact, because you're saying you have to hire a dedicated. Look, if you're going to set up a kitchen, okay, you're going to make sandwiches, all right. More than likely, you're not going to be able to set up the gas stoves by yourself. You're not going to be able to set up the refrigeration units yourself. You're still going to have to hire somebody to come in and do that, a contractor. And that's something that's really missing is this sort of security IT / security/contractor kind of person who just comes in temporarily. Now, we like to call them consultants, but the problem is consultants come with a big price tag, and you don't need a consultant. You don't need a big schema and a strategy and all that. You need somebody to set up your equipment right, harden it, put it, make sure it's working, this kind of thing, just like you do with any other equipment for any other business. And if you're going to run a business, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that you're probably going to need some help to.
So what do you say to the companies that, which I hear this comment all the time, Pete, I got an IT guy, we got it covered.
Okay, I walk away. To be honest with you, because you can't sell somebody convinced of what they don't need. The thing is, there's so much information out there, so much news, that if they're really today have their head under a rock, what are you going to do? Why am I going to waste my time when there's tens of thousands of people who need security and are desperate to hire it, to buy it? I honestly can't waste my time convincing somebody who's not my parents, for example, and that's the sad truth of it.
I try to explain to them that, it's like IT is like considered your family doctor, right? Would you ever ask your family doctor to perform laser eye surgery on you? And most people would say no.
That's a good one. That's a very good example. And the problem, though, is that I know it sounds horrible to walk away, because the reason is it is horrible. If I'm not convincing them that they need security, they are just going to become another platform for a botnet, which is going to hurt me.
But their mentality is, well, I'm too small. I have no value in my company. No one's going to want to hack me. But they don't realize that they are the number one target.
One of the things that I was actually just talking about this today with somebody down in Australia was that strangely enough, the number of random hacks that are not bots has gone down, because I've set up some servers and stuff, and I've done some assessments where I find DNS is wide open and writable, and like you find some major things. One city I worked for did an IoT project, and their server was completely unprotected, and in their network that the IoT company put in and it was just, and I thought to myself, how could they not be more damaged? How is it? And the thing is, I started thinking about is that it's too easy now to find stuff online that nobody scans the internet anymore. It's very few people who actually go spelunking like we used to in the old days, looking for open systems, open ports, and they don't do that anymore. It's just not happening. The closest they'll come is maybe Google dorking or something like that. But and I think that's why if you put like your SSH port on 30,000 and something, you're probably safe, because bots aren't going to look for it. That's what you have to worry about, is the automated hacks, Why are people getting their logins cracked? It's not because they have weak passwords. It's because they reuse passwords. It's password spraying, not cracking, that's happening. Nobody's cracking anymore.
And they can understand too. So I get this. I got a blast of email a couple of weeks ago when that sextortion scam happened again. So whenever a company gets breached and their passwords leaked, they're able to crack your password and send you an email saying, "Hey, Pete, you don't know me, but here's your password. And if you don't pay me within Bitcoin, I have video of you on an adult website, and I'm going to share it to all your contacts." And people were freaking out. And I got so many emails about it, but they don't realize, to your point, they reuse the password somewhere else. So if they don't change that password or use different passwords everywhere else, they're going to get in.
So the trick is to reuse other people's passwords.
Yeah, that's it. And so you must get this question a lot from the beginners. How do I get started in cybersecurity? Because I have a hard time answering this question, because it's like coming up to someone who's got a black belt and say, how do I want to be a black belt too? But there's like 15 years of work effort that's been put in. So you can't just become a cybersecurity guy overnight. And plus, cybersecurity is so huge that you can't be everywhere. You got to be specialized in certain areas. Like how would you answer this question?
Well, we actually get this a lot. As a matter of fact, because of Hacker High School, we deal with a lot of teenagers, a lot of people. Most of them don't want to become cybersecurity professionals. Most of them just want to know how to hack things. Okay.
Yes.
Which is a whole different thing. But one of the things we get a lot is when we get about cybersecurity, how do I get into the cybersecurity field? What do I have to do? A lot of times it's their parents asking, not them, because, my son or daughter really likes hacking and wants to go. So my answer always
computers.
Well, my first answer to them is they've still got a ways to go. And more than likely, you don't know if the job they're going to do someday even exists today yet. When I was back in college, hacking didn't exist as a job. It didn't exist as a career. Neither did cybersecurity. It just wasn't there. You worked in IT. And even that, like, there was no real information technology. Like, it wasn't the same. And the thing is that we're talking a difference of 10 years. That's nothing, And the first thing I have to tell them is there's a very good chance that whatever they think they're going to do or think they want to do doesn't exist yet. Okay. So what they need to do is learn hacking as a skill, which is basically, how do you investigate something, get knowledge on something so deeply that you can control it. Yeah. And the first steps, is really, it's basic science. It's about investigation. It's about looking into processes. And we have Hacker High School, which teaches them how to do these things, how to look at it. We have the 4-point process, which is also in the Austin. So that's the thing. The things we teach in Hacker High School are the exact same things we teach to professionals. Yeah. We just teach it through stories instead of, like a textbook.
And maybe you could debunk a myth at the same time. I'm sure you've had students saying, "Oh yeah, if I hack this company, I'm going to get a job."
Yeah, I know. You're going to get arrested. Actually, honestly, to be honest with you, probably nothing will happen to you. I hate to put that out there, but it's probably true. Nothing will happen to you.
Because by the time the company investigate how the hack happened and prove it was actually that kid, well, they may have spent up to $100,000 with legal fees and all this kind of stuff. So are they going to go and spend $100,000 on this kid, or are they just going to beef up their security?
Listen, attribution sucks on the internet. It sucks. There's no way. You go to a company and you find out who did this. They don't know. They can't tell you who was behind the computer. Even if they find an IP address, they don't know if it was chained and proxied or what. It's nothing short of a nation state can actually possibly who controls routers everywhere could possibly track something down like that. And even then, if it comes from overseas and in different places, Venezuela stuff, good luck, I'm a firm believer that the internet was designed so that poor people could steal stuff from really, really far away so that they don't have to travel. So
I work with technology like honeypotting technology that allows you to kind of hack back the hackers and maybe even find out where they're coming from, even through anonymous proxy systems. So for example, say a guy's coming into a VPN. Well, there's ways for me to send out a JavaScript, which will do a site survey of his laptop, which asks all the Wi-Fi in his area, tell me where I am. And it triangulates him within 5 meters of his computer. And I even have the capability of turning on his webcam and say, yep, it was that guy behind the screen. But now I just violated a privacy law. Now I can get in trouble for it. So that's why cybersecurity is such a depressing field right now, because everything we're suggesting is somewhere between not working or barely working at all.
Actually, it's a lot. What I would call is just security. Okay, you can't control the outcomes of anything. The only thing you can control is you. And we teach this in Austin. We teach it in Hacker High School. You can control you. You can block and separate. I see there's a question here from Hope 2007.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think students at school should have a special subject like internet safety? I really do. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even just say internet safety. I would say communications. There definitely needs to be stuff. As a matter of fact, she's 19 now. My daughter, for years, has been writing on the Silence blog about this, specifically for teens. You might want to check it out. Her name's Isla Madison. She's 19, but she's been writing since she was 16. Both my daughters were at RSA. They've been speakers there. You can find videos to actually just come to hackerhighschool.org and check it out. We have that stuff there. You can show those to teens. We're talking about teens talking to teens about safety, and they'll tell you most of their friends have no clue what they're doing.
No, exactly. I'll give you a perfect example. So I do a lot of work with the Leslie B. Pearson network here in Montreal, and they have 25,000 students, and they have what's called the Digital Citizenship Project that goes on, which teaches technology to the kids. But there's absolutely no safety side of it. There's no prevention side of it. So I've been working for years trying to get Internet Safety University into, or kind of blended in with that. And one of the challenges is because there's no dedicated subject matter expert that can keep that subject up to date, that they don't feel that they can actually pull it off. So it's very, very difficult.
Terry, there's a trick to this, by the way. And this is something we learned way back in 2006. You can't keep up with threats. It's not even worth it. So you focus on you. You can keep up on your controls, which controls you have in place based on all the interactions. The more interaction points you open up, the bigger your attack surface, the more controls you need. The more controls you have, the more attack surface you have. It's a fight continuously, but you don't have to worry about 1 times 10 to the 126 types of threats. No, you only have to worry about your own backyard. And that's how you do it.
I want to ask a question that we spoke about when we chatted the other day. I woke up in the middle of the night last week. I'm thinking, why aren't the scientists, that are working on COVID, working with cybersecurity experts and hackers and reverse engineers, so they can help them think outside the box and resolve this vaccine? And you were actually working with a team. You're already ahead of the game, working with folks. Maybe you can talk about that.
Okay. Well, one of the things I've always been into biohacking. That was something I've always been interested in. I started way back. God, I can't remember how long ago. It had to be in the late 80s, early 90s with something called Pills A Go-Go. And you can still find elements of that zine online. It ended up, they got arrested and there's a warrant out for my arrest and all that fun stuff. But
right.
because the idea was just taking over-the-counter medicines and seeing if you can make drugs out of them for whatever reason, or medications, whatever you want it for. But if you could convert them using chemistry and biology. And I ended up working at the CDC. I worked at ATSDR. I considered going to medical school. I ended up working at Buffalo Medical School to see if I can get tuition. Like, I was really interested in going that path. But hacking really took over. I mean, it was something I was much more driven to do, and I couldn't imagine going back to school for another 8 years. So that was out. But I've been following biohacking for a long time, and biohacking has really taken off. And as soon as COVID, there was a hint of it back in December last year. They were already talking about it, and they were analyzing it and looking at ways that they could block it and different non-prescription medications, things that could be obviously hacked and used in order to keep yourself safe based on what we knew about it. And of course, this is evolving. The more we know about COVID, the more this changes. But they had a lot of suggestions. And of course, the problem is I tried to take this to authorities and they don't listen.
No.
They don't want to hear it because who am I? And the truth is I know more about risk than they do. Okay, they might know biology, they might know medicine, they might even know disease, but they might not know risk, which is something very specific in epidemiology. It's something I worked with epidemiologists at CDC. I was very aware of what it is. And it's a very different way of thinking than medicine.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, the TV show House was more about that, about epidemiology, than it was about being a doctor. And obviously the whole premise of the show was about how different he was and how different he thought. And I can imagine his character dealing with COVID. And so a lot of this kind of stuff we were trying to do, and we were even looking at another thing we were doing is when they were talking about tests, the first thing the biohacker community actually looked at and said, okay, we can't make new hardware. So let's see what we can hack out of existing hardware, something we can use fast, buy in bulk, because factories are shutting down, and convert it. Software we can make, hardware we can't. So we were looking at spectrometers, for example, which there's plenty of for testing drugs and all sorts of things that the police all carry. And most of them are just little computers that can handle large assays. And
like a breathalyzer.
Yes, like a breathalyzer. And the idea is that you would only need to have enough people actually, it would have to be worked with. You'd have to work with a hospital, those who definitely have COVID, those who definitely don't. And you would actually do tests of large numbers of them, of all the different ways you can test them with this breathalyzer, all the different ways that you can put it through. And then, of course, just do pattern matching and maybe some machine learning on it and figure it out. But
well, imagine how easy that would be. Just showing up to work, saying, okay, before you enter these doors, take your breathalyzer, and you would know almost instantly if you have COVID, because you guys have been able to discover that maybe the way your breath smells or whatever, that you may have it.
Look, there's dogs that can detect cancer. I think there's a woman who can smell Parkinson's disease. Like we know that disease changes the body chemistry, which changes possibly how your breath smells. We know this from diabetes, for example. Most of us, there was a huge thing, I think, with diabetes in the beginning where people were getting fired for drinking on the job when it was just the ketones in their breath. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what hacking is. We try things and we learn from our failures. And this is something every occupation needs. They need hackers in all different ways.
Yeah, I agree with you. But Pete, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your wisdom with us. And I can't thank you enough for being part of my my journey here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I just want to point out two things. Is that one, if you send people to easycom.org, I see there's some questions here. We have Hacker High School. You can reach Hacker High School there. We have the free lessons online.
Let me put the banner. What's the best place to reach out to your stuff?
hackerhighschool.org. Just go to isecom.org. You'll reach everything. isecom.org.
Okay.
And
ISE. Yeah.
isecom.org. And you can reach Hacker High School. You can also reach something there called the Cybersecurity Playbook, which is something we did with the company. Cybersecurity Playbook. You can find it there as well. And it's for small, medium businesses on how to secure themselves and how to understand security. It's written specifically for them, for the smaller people. It's all free.
Is this the URL right here?
Yep, that's it. Thanks.
So they'll be able to get in here and access all your content.
Yeah,
because you've got an abundance amount of content as well. So,
well, we've trimmed it back over the years because, believe it or not because it's not valid, not because it's not up to date, but because it's people it makes us look crazy if something is too advanced or just too not like what's being taught in the norm. Even if it does work or it's good, you lose credibility, unfortunately. So So
because there's some questions already coming in about it. So what's the list of controls that should be in place? So because we're short on time, I'll have him visit your website and he'll be able to pull that out.
Cybersecurity Playbook. You'll find it all in there in the list of controls. Everything's there, even a checklist. Yeah. Thanks, Terry.
Awesome.
It's great.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Great conversation. So now I want to wrap up the show with two of my guests. We'll bring in Richard and Dunya. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Oh, I'm being blocked. My face, my good-looking face is being blocked. Let me take this off here. Boom.
Oh, good. You look good, Terry.
I wanted to bring you guys on just to quickly talk about how this book came to life, because I got a ton of questions offline saying, how did you get started? How much did it cost? What was the process? So I figured maybe we can talk about this here. So, so Richard, we've known each other for a very, very, very long time, right? So you're an investigative journalist. You used to be the director of the Quebec Community Newspaper Association, which you had, how many papers were in that thing?
At its peak, 40 newspapers. 40
newspapers across Quebec. And now you're the CEO of Smiling Eyes Press. You have a couple of books out, and you've been my ghostwriter since 2008. So we've done a lot of stuff together. And Dunya was the glue here that brought the text to life, because I'm sure she must have saying, when she was reading my first version of the book, I'm sure she was saying, who the hell wrote this crap?
I did not. I was impressed by the amount of information that you provided. And that's part of the struggle, was just to be able to condense it and have as much information as you wanted, and also to present it in a way that you would like to see it.
Right.
So, because you did have when we hear you speak, it's very straightforward, simple.
Right.
Anybody can get this. We're in it together, and you want to get that message across in the book. But it was just to be like, okay, well, that won't exactly work. We're going to have to find a way to make that come out the way you want it to come out.
Yes.
So it was work on the book, actually. So,
that was the biggest challenge, is because it's written as if I'm speaking directly to you, but it can't be written in that format in a book.
And also just to make sure all the information that you wanted to get in there would get in there properly, and a way that as simple-minded is the wrong term, but someone who's not as tech savvy will be able to go with the book and be able to put those securities in place so that they won't get hacked as easily. And if they do,
that was a big challenge, because it's taking the complexity out of cybersecurity and dumbing it down for the average individual was very, very difficult. I mean, this thing was, like Richard and I know, right? This is 7 years in the making, this book. Every time I would put my content in, I got busy, came back to it. God, this sucks. Scrap it over. You'd get mad at me. Why are you starting over? This is good stuff. And then finally, 6 months ago, you sat me down and said, listen, we're going to get this done now. Enough is enough. And here we are.
Well, you are the expert, one of the experts in your field. And it was important to us that we finally put something forward. Now, there are many experts in the field. Peter, who you just interviewed, was one, and yourself. Yet you had this idea of having a conversation with people, not only working with corporate, you also want to work with the home user as well.
Yeah.
This was a difficult challenge to mix it, but you have to understand, as Allison pointed out earlier, you're working from home on maybe a company iPhone with company passwords. You are mixed, home, work, corporate, it's all overlapped and mixed. 2-factor, 3-factor, maybe even 4-factor authentication is something that we have to think about. But what if you are hacked? And Allison described her nightmare. And we think now it's a small portion of what could have happened.
Yeah.
Some of these protections. So in your book, you have a whole great chapters on advice, even how to set up your own check, your own system. But the process for writing this book, because everybody has knowledge of what they want to write about, and that's the best. The best way to write a book is write about what you know.
Yeah.
Or write about what you feel, and everybody has that book in them. And as you said, Terry, at one time you were giving birth to a baby. Well, this was a long 7.5-year delivery.
Well, with this COVID stuff, I've gained a couple of pounds, so I feel like I'm pregnant again.
Well, I have written books on that, but that's something for another stream. Yeah. At the same time, everybody has known you as being in this field for many years, and your history is interesting because you took the course on ethical hacking. You left Novell, which was relatively secure role and job and position, but you had a dream and a belief, and what you did was you followed it. Mm-hmm. Though times might be up and times might be down, and it could be struggling, you're raising a family, you're like the everyday person, except you have this knowledge to help everyone else. And you started Internet Safety University as well.
Right. That was my challenge. That was my biggest challenge, was how do I bring corporate enterprise quality security information and dumb it down for the average individual? Yeah. That was my mission.
Well, the mission came through in the book, and as Dunya was saying, the conversational piece, like how we're talking today, if it's recorded and transcribed, would never make it into the book without everything. And this was a challenge I had with a lot of the writers, yourself included. With you were insisting on having that conversational style, so we tried to adhere to that, knowing full well that the reading and talking style are two different things, because we hold it easier. Plus, we can put that book down. Yeah. Sometimes when we're having a conversation, we can't just put you down or walk away, and we don't do things. So we had to make that adapting. So those who are wishing to write books of anything, even if you have an idea, has to understand that it needs to go into a readable document, which takes 5 o'clock in the morning, whenever you have your time, or me as your publisher and CEO and driver and accountability expert, pushing you to, hey, look, you promised me this by Friday. You do have a contract, and this is going to be your book. And as everyone is seeing right now, you have a book, which is getting reviews on Amazon. So the process seems simple, but there's a complication.
Maybe walk people through that, because a lot of people think, well, I can just write an ebook and publish it. Now, I've seen people write ebooks, and there's so much grammar errors in it.
Right.
They even tried to like ask me for my name in the book. I'm like, no, I can't put my name on something like this. And some of their stuff is, it's terrible. Like, that's why I did not want to be one of those ebook guys. I wanted to make sure there was quality put into this book and delivers as much value as possible in the simplest amount of form. That's why maybe you could talk people, how do people get started with writing a book?
Well, first thing is you touched on something right away. I will not let you or anyone put a book out unless I have accountability to what you were just talking about. The grammar's bad. The sentences don't link. Chapters don't run. It's repetitive at chapter 7 when you said something in chapter 2. This is the biggest part of the process. And Dunya is our editor, and we're affiliated with other organizations, including Oxygen Publishing.
That was a comment actually Dunya brought up. There's some repetitive going on.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges we have in cybersecurity, is that there's so many ways to hack you that you could be doing it one way, and but if you don't think about it this other way, which we spoke about earlier, it can also happen to you. So that was one of the biggest challenges I had.
But that's book 2, right?
There's so much stuff.
However direction you want to go. But me and you, I work with my writers, that's what I did with you, but we're getting buggy-eyed on some things now.
Right.
It's handed over to an editor or a proofer. Now, but you asked about process. If you have a manuscript that starts with a manuscript assessment, we will tell you where your next step is going. I will look, let's take you, for example. I will assess your manuscript and decide or look at what kind of an editor are you? Have you edited? What kind of writer are you? Do you understand things? Because we do scripts sometimes, and people get mixed up with it is, and apostrophes, and there. Believe me, I cannot believe it, but this is an indication on the assessment that this may need more than just a proof. Now, a proofread is a surface check on grammar, almost line by line. Editing, it's a deep dive. We may need to rewrite some things.
Which we did.
Obviously, it costs more to do that. Yet, sometimes the proofreader may edit something as well. But it's small things, because editing is like sitting down. Now, that's not even a ghostwrite, because a ghostwrite means I'm your writer. But we had material, you had material and ideas. So there's this whole thing about where you are with your manuscript. If you do not have a manuscript, then you come on board with me and we start to develop your ideas and where you would like to go. I would find out, are you a writer? Because people have ideas and they want to publish a book, but they know and admit that they're not a writer.
Yeah.
So we may take it to a ghostwriting level, or maybe even encourage the person, write me something, write me 500 words. And maybe we'll teach a little bit. Most times it's handed off to a ghostwriter, which is a different sort of animal, because now I have to interview you. If I didn't know you all these years, Terry, you wanted me to write a book and ghostwrite, I have to sit down for about 10 weeks with you.
Yeah.
Where
do I start?
Get into your head. And then, because by the time I have to hand it off to my editor approver, like Dunya, she's not in your head. She's an outside looking in. I have to be in your head, because if I'm writing it for you, she has to be in my head. So that's some of the process. Of course, there's the cover design, there's the designing of the interior of the book, but that's at a later stage when we're through those editorial processes at that point. Now, Terry, you had so much knowledge. I mean, Peter could have been interviewing you. We have so much knowledge just like he does, yet we came to 160 pages at the end. Well,
we had a chop.
Written. We had so much bibliography and so much referencing in the book, yet we could have done, I think, 1,000.
Yeah.
But we
easily.
Have to come it down, because not everybody is reading, you know?
No, that's it.
Not
really wouldn't do that, actually. I think you were able to put in the right amount of information for this book. We all the way to COVID. You put in so much things to get a person started, also to continue to give them tips and hints, and it's crammed full of greatness.
Yeah.
And the one good thing about it is that we did stop it. We did. And that the next book will handle more. And it's so important to have a book, the audio. You have so many options for people to get this book and have knowledge. And although you weren't sure that you wanted to write it, as a person with a grandmother, as a person with a mother who my mother's actually works for IBM, so she's pretty good. But my grandmother loves to download things, I'm buying this book and I'm giving it to her because it is so full of knowledge that she can actually open up. If I told her to go on a website, she might not. But if I hand her this book, she will open it, she will read it, and she will get wiser for it. So I'm actually, no, thank you. The one who did the work.
Our book has information in it. It's all informing nonfiction. It's all informing people. If you're a pro and an expert, as you are, Terry, you have something to say. That doesn't mean someone else has to be an expert.
Right.
They may have a stellar idea that no one has thought about. Well, maybe someone has, but there's 8 billion people in the world. But your little unique corner, your idea can sell books. And now the stage we're at now is we're live streaming the book, we're launching, we're marketing, we're Kindling, we're doing everything we need to do. And Terry, you speak quite often, so this is where your book is going to be at the forefront.
Yeah, and actually, I was very, very challenged because I'm like, why am I going to write a book where it's going to be obsolete very quickly? Because as even Pete mentioned, this information is flying at us so fast, even us cyber guys can't even keep up. Which means technically, this book is somewhat obsolete, but the content in this book, has been used for the last 10 years and is still very relevant today. The advice and the tactics and stuff. So there's some parts that won't die, but there's a lot of stuff that changes. And that's why I want this.
I disagree with that, Terry, that the book is obsolete. Doing it ourselves, we talked about that when we were looking. Is this going to be obsolete or should we use it? And we did some checks that some things were already obsolete, and we talked to you about it. Yet this is information that can come off a shelf. Yeah, I remember Terry's first book 8 years ago. He has 8 books now, but this is going back on. So it's kind of like an historical record you have of this right now. Yeah, it's out of date. Like my hats I wear. I probably will change hats next year, but still, it was at one time the important factor in the archival history of internet safety.
But more than that, it also teaches people to look out for. Yes, there are going to be more sophisticated scams coming out. That's going to be that's of course. There's always a way to make more money, right? But the basics of how to protect yourself, there is a core. And if you have a person who has an open phone, who has an open computer, does not know about putting the simple things in start, then they're already losing the battle.
Yeah. Well, there's a perfect way to just rephrase what I just said. There's the core of the information is in that book. Perfect. There you go.
Not that obsolete word, and just think it's the core. If you don't learn the core, how are you going to protect yourself? How am I supposed to go from A to, you need to go A, B, C, D. You have to go. If you say someone, oh, well, here, this is how you do this, it will not work. They
won't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. You need to people step by step, and this is what you did in this book, and it's the core of cybersecurity in my eyes.
Look at Allison. Allison had some knowledgeable ideas about this. What if Allison didn't? She said she turned to her family members, but they might be limited in a way too. But what if she didn't? She's more than just pulling out her hair. She's losing this money. She's not knowing to call. Now, she has to rely on people at call centers who are not the most reliable because they have their own systems too, and they're trying to protect their own.
And plus, they don't even know if it's really Allison calling in.
Well, yeah. So we have this whole complication. We touched on that in one of the chapters. Who the heck's on the other side of the phone?
That's right.
So, a comment here was elderly people need to be brought in there more. I've written so many stories on elders being afraid of getting phone calls from Canada Revenue Agency. And okay, I'll pay. Here's my visa. But, and Dunia's grandmother might be one of them. that's something else. And we mentioned a bit about this too, that everybody needs to be educated, or somebody in the family would actually be on their guard and teach them as well. So Dunya made a good point, and Allison made a point too. It's changing. While we're defending better, they're attacking.
Allison very scared me. And I don't know if I would have understood what was happening. Luckily, she did. And luckily, she had that information that allowed her to take the next step. So will any information stop you from getting scammed? No. But if you have that information, you'll be able to, say, uh-oh, there's an issue. That's
it. You can only make it as hard as possible for them to get in. That's the only thing. There's no silver bullet. And exactly it. And a lot of people, when they contact me, they've already been hacked. It's like, help me get my stuff back. Well, the stuff is already gone now. How do you want me to call up, the provider or the email service provider and prove that it's me representing you? It makes no sense. So you got to really learn to protect yourself in advance,
Well, that was the getting started part of the chapter. It was basics and getting started and what to do. You actually walked them through some setups for just basic computer protection.
Right.
And we did get into cyberbullying a little bit. And that's almost like another book in itself. Yeah. Still through the internet, the safety part of it, and the online social media and everything. So experts like you have your hands full. And you put it into 160 pages in a book, you have touched the tip of the iceberg. Technology again.
That's it.
Most definitely the book is out there. I'm receiving a lot of interest through my contacts in the company, as you are. And I suspect now Amazon will have more results. And now we know that the book has been read at least once.
Yes. Thanks, cuz.
Online right now.
That's it.
Read it.
Maybe I could take a quick commercial break. What I want to do is I want to show the audience a sample of the audiobook.
Yeah, perfect.
So Kaleo couldn't join us today, but Kaleo is actually let me bring up some of his information here. 1 minute, because there's so much stuff about him.
He did Obama's biography, didn't he?
Yeah, oh, he's got more than that. Yeah, so he's a classically trained, multiple award-winning actor and voice actor. So he's appeared on multiple shows, including Law & Order and Law & Order SUV. So for all you fans out there. And he's also narrated close to 200 books on Audible, including the Donald Trump Art of the Deal book, which I own. So that's when I reached out to him and I said, dude, I want you part of my book or else I'll hack you. No, I'm kidding. So he sent me back a sample chapter, and I just loved it. So let me just take a second. I'll play it. Hold on.
Sure.
Chapter 1. Taking the First Step to Protection. During seminars, I love to ask the audience, who knows how to use Google? Everyone raises their hands. Then I ask, how many of you really know how to use Google? There's a reason for the Google question. Turn on Safe Search. I'm going to show you a quick trick of how you can limit your searches to specific information that you didn't know existed.
Pretty cool.
You see, what you didn't know existed. You don't know, it doesn't exist.
That's it.
You're afraid if you get scammed or hacked.
That's it. That's why they always ask the question, could this have happened?
How could we went through the book. We weren't calling it hackers anymore, by the way.
Yeah, cyber criminals. That's it.
Because you mentioned very early in this wonderful book that it's more than just your sweatpants basement dwelling, living in mom's basement. Hacker, few tools he downloaded from Google.
Yep.
That there's a whole cyber criminal thing out there. And we talked about Nigeria. We talked about Europe and China and these things. But we also talked about right here at home as well.
That's it.
It's, the Audible, it sounds really good because he's putting the inflection of the meaning And he's actually putting back in that conversation with the text we had. So that's where the conversation.
Well, that's what I told him. I said, look, I need to make sure my personality comes out into the book. And I mean, I could have done this audiobook myself, but I know how long it takes, and it's very, very exhausting, and I speak fast. So that's one of the complaints I got back from a lot of viewers in past videos, was I speak way too fast. So I wanted to make sure I had it done professionally and great quality.
Well, that's what we need to hear, because Audible, a lot of people now in their vehicles are listening to podcasts and Audible books more. I don't know so much now, but when everything is into its normality, that we are actually doing. I do it all the time now. I don't want to listen to the news anymore. So we do that, and a nice sounding voice. But that's what Audible does, and the Kindle as well. I mean, people are reading on their phones and so, and it's not a far reach once the book is written, is it? I mean,
no,
this is there. Because this becomes a basis for your Kindle, obviously, and the basis for your, because most people I know Audible, they will read the text.
Correct.
And because we don't hear it when we're writing, they may have to change things, but not the text, but the inflection.
That's right.
Of the voice. So a professional auditor is good. I would in no way record any of my books. It would have someone else. If Dunya has a good voice, she might be future in it for herself.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think we've wrapped up. We've covered a ton of stuff on this thing. There's going to be this is going to be the platform for future shows where I'm going to bring in other experts, live guests who are commenting. So we'll be able to have a good show going on. A lot of questions being answered and such. So that's about it. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate all your time. Get the book. Buy the book. Let me get the link back up in a minute.
Amazon.ca.
Head over to terrykeller.com/book, and this will redirect you to where you got to go for Amazon. Now, it is an international launch, and that's why, this book's been published actually a month ago, right? So, but there was a reason why we pushed it out a month, because by the time it replicates to all the other marketplaces, Japan, Italy, and such, and also I was hoping to get the audiobook done at the same time of this launch, but it won't happen. It's going to take another, 2 weeks to a month by the time it goes through the world, and also the audio. I have to reread the audio with it.
So my question to you is, now as we finish off, when do we start working on book 2?
It's already in the works. We're going to get to it.
Okay, we'll talk.
We're going to get to it. Yes, sir. Thanks, guys. So that's all I got for this stream, and I hope you enjoyed it. So please, if you have any questions, you can send them over to ask@terrycutler.com. So this way I'll be able to get them answered on the next show. And that's all I got for now. Take care and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.